Life can change in an instant. For many wheelchair users, the struggle to push forward is a daily challenge.
After years of development and countless prototypes, we created Rib Grips, the revolutionary wheelchair hand rim covers with built-in ribs for ultimate grip and comfort.
No more slick surfaces, no more heat burns, just pure, reliable grip. Rib Grips, empowering you to push forward with ease. Rib Grips, get a grip on your freedom. Discover the difference. Visit ribgrips.com and use promo code GRIP today. You just found the perfect product that helps with staying cool during hot summer runs. No more gross warm water. Stay cool with this product from Gear Handle. This hydration tube cover helps keep your water cool and easily accessible. Stay hydrated during those long summer runs or even delay from freezing in the winter. Plus, they're compatible with various brands of water bladders and come in various colors. Visit gearhandle.com and use promo code H2O today.
This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Welcome back to Silent Witness, the true crime cold case podcast here at Rogue Media Network. Hosted by Christina.
Hello, hello.
And Erica. Hi, what you got for us today? I checked out there for a minute. Welcome back.
Okay. Well, let's go to Houston, Texas.
Okay. They just got bombarded this weekend. But let's go.
Yes, they did. I don't think it was as bad, though, the hurricane. As it normally is.
There was some damage there.
A little bit, yeah.
But yeah. Okay.
Okay.
We are in Houston.
Yeah, so we're in Houston, which is the largest city in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going back to the 1990s and a little history. I've gotten where I like to do this.
Yes.
In the 90s, nightclubs and restaurants allowed smoking inside. We had Astro World was a fun spot for everyone to go to. And that's a lot like Six Flags. Astro World is a lot like Six Flags.
Okay, so it's not like a baseball theme park.
No. It's just a theme park. But
okay.
It's more Six Flags.
Okay.
Rent for a one-bedroom apartment was around $300 to $500.
Shut the front
I know.
door.
Can you believe it?
No.
There was not sushi in grocery stores. Something About Mary was in theaters.
Oh, that was a funny movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Destiny's Child and Will Smith topped the chart.
Oh, okay.
And Bill Clinton was impeached. And Google was born.
Hey, that's my friend, Google.
Yay. Okay. So let's talk about Peggy Lynn Howard.
Peggy Lynn. Okay.
Peggy was born in Georgia on February 7th in 1973.
Okay.
Her mother, Wanda, ended up giving her and her sister up for adoption. Not many details are available why, but they believe, this is allegedly, were abused by their biological father, and their mother could not care for them. And there wasn't any family. Okay. A heartbreaking decision for their mother, but caring for two babies with no help. In the early 70s, when divorce really wasn't a thing, and child support wasn't a thing, and alimony and all that wasn't something you got.
Were they super young and close in age? Does it say?
It doesn't say how old they were, but they were super young. Yeah.
Okay.
But it was just. There wasn't the resources either that moms today have. You didn't have any of those, WIC.
Right, I was going to say, was WIC even a thing then?
No.
Yeah, no.
So you didn't have those resources. So a couple adopted the girls, but Wanda, mom, stayed in their lives. And according to my research, she stayed in their lives.
Okay.
And had contact with them. According to her sister, Peggy was small, petite, with a big personality. Very spirited.
All right.
Other than a few quotes from Wanda, their mom, and her sister, little is known about life after adoption.
Oh, okay.
So as most young adults, Peggy left home at a young age that, they did back then. Kids left at 18. Mm-hmm. They don't, not 26 like my son.
Yes. I mean, $300 rent, I can make that happen.
Yeah. But at age 19, about age 18 to 19, she went to Florida.
Okay.
She married a man named Brian Howard.
Okay.
At age 19, she gave birth to Alyssa.
Oh.
Yeah. It's not known if Brian was the biological father.
Okay.
And I tried to look for when they got married, but I couldn't find anything in the records.
Oh, okay.
And we'll see here in just a minute. Florida has very good online records, but I could not find that.
Okay.
Brian was a little bit older than Peggy, but not, he wasn't like 20 years older.
Right.
He
He's
was
not like 45.
No, he was about 5 years, according
okay.
to my research. 5-6 years older.
Okay.
Brian was not a good person.
Oh.
And their relationship was pretty troubled from the beginning.
Oh.
Brian has had a lot of trouble with the law. In 1991, Brian was arrested for burglary and assault on a person and grand theft. Now, Florida laws are different than Texas laws. Mm-hmm. We don't have necessarily a grand theft here in Texas, but we have a theft, obviously. But
there's not like a monetary limit.
Yeah.
That makes it a bigger deal?
Yeah, it is in Texas. I'm not, again, and I'm sure that is in Florida. I'm just not sure. I know it was a felony. The theft. The theft.
Felonious.
Then 2 months later, in November of 1991, he was arrested for domestic violence against Peggy.
Oh.
And then I believe the domestic violence was in November. I could be wrong about that. But in November of 1991, he was arrested for armed kidnapping and 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder.
Oh, dang. Who'd he kidnap? Does it say?
Yeah. I dug and dug, and I found the records. So.
Look at you.
I know. Luckily, Florida has records online, especially, after digging, I could find some police records. So I did.
Good job, Florida.
Yeah. Unlike Texas.
Paper.
Come
What'd
on.
you find?
Okay,
who'd he take?
According to his criminal records from that incident, according to his court records, not criminal court records, he was ordered a mental evaluation.
Good call.
And it's presumed that he was found competent because the case proceeded. So, but he continued in and out of jail. And in January 1992, he was, so a few months later, he was charged with escape from custody. I do not know details about that one.
Okay.
So let's go back to the kidnapping and first-degree murder.
Yeah.
So Peggy was one of the victims of the attempted murder, and the officer who responded to the incident was the second victim.
He tried to kill the cop?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's a dummy.
Yeah. So I found appeal paperwork from that conviction, and in that appeal paperwork, it had the original offense report. So because of the domestic violence, Peggy was staying with her mother, Wanda. I guess I guess she had moved to Florida.
Okay.
But she did move in with her mom due to problems with Brian and the domestic violence.
Sure. Good call. Good job, Peggy Lynn.
She did have an injunction, which is the same as a protective order.
Thank you. Y'all can't see my confused face.
Yeah, it's the same as a protective order, but
Okay.
again, that's just a piece of paper. What are you going to do?
Yeah, not much. Yeah.
Yeah, what are you going to do? Throw it at him?
Mm-hmm.
But
Paper cut.
Brian went to the mother's address to talk to Peggy.
Mm-hmm.
He arrived about 8 a.m., and Mom let him in the residence. All three sat at the dining room table to talk.
Okay.
According to Brian, in his paperwork, in his appeal, it was a pleasant conversation, which that's not the truth.
Oh, I'm like, how did it end up where it ended up then, sir?
According to Brian, Peggy gave him an ultimatum saying, you have 2 years to buy us a house and I want another baby.
What? Ew. What?
That's
Ew.
not, I don't believe that that's true.
Okay.
This is what he says.
Okay.
He says he told her he was working as much as he can to get stable. Again,
lies.
Liar. Yeah, he's making it in his appeal paperwork that it was a pleasant conversation. There was no problems, and then all of a sudden there was a knock at the door.
Oh,
at about 8:30, and a police showed up.
Just
Because
to say, hey,
yeah, hey, what's up?
can I have some coffee?
So we know that that's not the truth because if
We've
somebody,
already agreed that Brian is dumb.
if somebody called the police, that wasn't a pleasant conversation.
And only half an hour later,
Well,
right? You said that he got there about 8 a.m.
yeah, and about 8:30
police
is when the
arrived.
police showed up. So I
That
mean,
got loud real quick.
yeah,
That started loud.
it
That started him banging on the door.
yeah. Likely it started normal, hey, whatever,
Hmm.
and then progressed. I think this was, I can't remember where this was in Florida, but it wouldn't have taken the police very long to get there.
Okay.
And according to Brian, no one in the house called them, but it wasn't clear who did call the police.
Okay.
A neighbor or if mom did or whatever.
Okay.
But because it just states in the police report that the officer responded to a family disturbance. So that's
Okay.
all it said. Brian opened the door and officers asked what the problem was. At this point, Peggy told the officers, hey, he's been harassing me and there's an injunction. There's a
Okay.
protective order. So
Yeah.
the officer goes to his patrol unit to call it in
Mm-hmm.
to get information if this is true and whatever.
Okay.
And that basically the validity of the injunction, making sure it was still valid and
Sure.
whatever. At this point, Brian took Peggy out the back door and told mom not to tell the police. They left out the back door to the back fence.
Okay.
Wanda, of course, went to the front to tell the officer this is, he took her out back and he's got a gun.
Okay. Ooh. You didn't mention the gun part. Okay.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
Trying to, the
I know.
suspense.
Build it.
The officer went around to the back. He went around the house to the back where they were,
Mhm.
trying to climb the fence. Brian was probably, hey, you're coming with me at
Sure.
gunpoint. She was scared. Officer told him to stop. At this point, Peggy broke free of him and ran toward the officer.
Mhm.
Brian then turned and fired 2 shots at Peggy and missed. Brian then fired another shot at the officer and I believe hit the patrol car. Brian fled the scene, but later turned himself in.
Okay.
According to Brian's that appeal paperwork, he says that the gun dropped and accidentally went off
3 times.
Yeah. Well, he said twice.
Okay.
He wasn't meaning to shoot Peggy or the officer.
Sure.
Stop it.
Sure. That gun just had a mind of its own.
But then again, he ended up pleading guilty.
He pled guilty
Yeah.
after saying he didn't do it?
Well, this was in the appeal paperwork.
Okay.
So he ended up being convicted in 1992, and it was a plea bargain. Usually, the way plea bargains work is they're going to drop a couple of the charges and
Sure.
reduce it, and that's usually how it works, and that's why they plead. That's an incentive, because if they were to take it to trial, you're going to get more time with
Right.
the jury, especially when you get a cop and a wife to testify.
Yeah.
So
But then he appealed it.
listen.
This dude. Okay.
So he pled guilty. He was convicted of
Okay.
attempted murder and escape.
Okay.
And escape was, I believe, a separate incident, but I don't know the details of the escape.
And then the kidnapping charge was because
Well,
he
the
grabbed her,
kidnapping
but
was
then
dropped.
They dropped it during the plea.
Mhm.
Okay.
So
So little Alyssa was fine.
yeah, I don't know.
She's not even mentioned.
She,
in all of it.
yeah, I don't.
Okay.
I don't know where she may have been at school.
Sure.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
So he was sentenced to 20 years in Florida prison.
Okay.
And he was released from that sentence in 2002.
Okay.
So he served his full
So-
term.
Wait, what? He was given what?
20 years,
So he served.
92 to 2002.
So he served 10 years.
Was that 10?
Yeah. So he served half his sentence.
Half the sentence, yeah. And I know that their system. Okay, I'm not a math major.
No, but I was just sitting here going, "Wow, he got off kind of easy." I mean,
No. But so he would have been on parole.
okay.
But if it's like Texas, if it is a aggravated offense,
Mm-hmm.
something with violence or a weapon or somebody was hurt, then they
Mhm.
have to serve a minimum of half the time.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry. Side note: that is such bullcrap to me. You have to serve at least half your sentence. No, dude, you should serve your whole time. That's the whole point.
right.
Sorry,
But that's not, and that's
I know that's not real life. But
yeah,
come on.
in the federal system, you do serve the minimum is 85% of your sentence.
Okay.
That's in the federal system, but this is state in,
50% is.
Yes. And
we'll
so.
get her done.
Okay. Again, the armed kidnapping was dropped.
Mhm.
It should be noted that Brian continued to live his life of crime in Florida. As recently as 2020,
oh, gosh.
he was released after being convicted of trafficking stolen property and another grand theft charge. So he's
Okay.
been in and out of prison, and
Just making bad decisions left and right.
he's
Oh,
a lovely, lovely man. So, Peggy eventually moved on.
Okay.
I'm unsure about like if there was a divorce. So,
Oh, okay.
like a formal divorce. One was filed, but it's not clear. In the record, it says dismissed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if it was dismissed because nobody showed up and it needed to be refiled, or if it was closed because of the divorce. From what I gathered, they didn't formally divorce.
There was no like final decree or anything.
That I didn't see it.
Okay.
But
Okay.
again, their records are different. If it was
Sure.
Texas, I could have read it and know what it meant, but I'm unsure with their language in Florida. So
Okay.
Peggy met a new man
Yay. Yay.
who convinced her to move to Houston.
Okay.
So Peggy and now 6-year-old Alyssa did
Oh.
move to Houston.
Okay.
Now, mind you, her family lived in Florida and Georgia. So, she didn't know anybody in Houston.
Didn't we start in Houston? Or the crime occurred in Houston?
The crime occurred in Houston. We started
Okay.
in Georgia, then Florida.
Georgia, then Florida.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so she did move to Houston.
Okay.
So she didn't know anybody other than the boyfriend. And then that relationship ended
Oh. Yeah.
with the boyfriend.
Bummer.
So Peggy and Alyssa stayed in Houston, which, it's hard to move. It's expensive to move.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, in 6, she was probably in school. That's hard too.
yeah. So they moved into a condominium
Mm-hmm.
in the Houston area. It's in West Houston called Brandy Creek Gated Community. So that's important. It's a gated community.
Okay.
So they moved and then only lived there a couple of months. So 2 months after Peggy and Alyssa moved to their home,
Mm-hmm.
on October 26, 1998, that's a Monday morning,
Mm-hmm.
Peggy headed out the door around 7:20 to not only take out the trash to the dumpster, but walk Alyssa to school.
Okay.
So she took Alyssa by the hand and had the white trash bag in the other. And, those complexes, like an apartment, you're just going to throw it in the dumpster.
The dumpster.
Yeah.
And be on your way. Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. And so the two walked out the front door hand in hand. And her car was parked right in front of the unit. And as they walked, and then there was it was a carport.
Okay.
And then there was a storage divider.
Okay.
So they had their car, let's say, on the right, and then the storage divider was on the left, and the door would be right in front of the car.
So the storage divider was on the driver's side, essentially.
Yes.
Okay.
As they walked past the car,
Mm-hmm.
which was a Toyota, a man stepped out from behind the storage divider, pulled a gun from his pocket. The shooter fired at Peggy, and Peggy fell to the ground.
Oh.
Alyssa ran and hid under her mother's car.
Good girl.
The shooter then walked around Peggy and shot her again
Jeez.
while she was on the ground,
Okay.
and then ran away.
Excessive.
It was aggressive, but, he
What?
makes sure the job is done, I guess. But then he ran away.
Okay.
The shooter ran through a security gate to a getaway car
Oh, okay.
and got into an 80s model Chevy Cavalier
Uh-huh.
on the passenger side.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Alyssa, in a panic after, began running up and down the
Aw.
sidewalk, knocking on doors,
Yeah.
trying to scream for help. A neighbor took her in, called the police, calmed her. And then Peggy was taken to the hospital by ambulance where she was pronounced dead.
Ugh. That poor little girl.
Yeah. So there were a few witnesses other than Alyssa.
Mm-hmm.
A man saw the shooter put something in his pocket as he ran out the gate to the vehicle. So these complexes, you have to drive in through a gate,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also security gates throughout.
Walk-through gates,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, like you could walk through if you're
Mhm.
going somewhere.
Sure.
And so that's where he left us, through one of those gates to get into the car. So I don't believe that the car was on the property.
It was like waiting outside.
Mm-hmm.
And when he said put something in his pocket, like the weapon?
Yeah,
or like,
it would have been the gun.
Okay.
Yeah. So the shooter was described as a young Hispanic male. He was slim, around 5'2", with a thin mustache.
5'2".
Well, he wore a green and purple starter jacket and a baseball cap. Some reports I read said he had a trench coat on, but more of them said it was a green and purple jacket.
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
This is why eyewitnesses are not.
Well,
Excellent
and it just could be the
resources.
reporting.
Okay.
According to witness, he wasn't a man at all. He was,
Oh, is that why you said when I said 5'2"?
yeah,
I
he
said
was a
bitty.
child.
Oh,
They
no.
They believe he was around 12 to 15 years of age.
God bless.
Yeah. So waiting right outside of the gate was the 80s.
Was his dad. I'm just kidding. I don't know. Was some, oh gosh.
So it was a young person, is what they suspect.
Mm.
But waiting right outside of the gate was the late 80s model Chevy,
Mm-hmm.
2-door black with a dent in the front left side.
Okay.
The driver, there's not much detail about the driver, and he was also described as a Hispanic male.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay.
Alyssa, of course, was questioned, and she was a very good witness, even though she was 6.
Mm-hmm.
She said that the shooter never spoke, but basically the killer laid in wait for Peggy and Alyssa, and she was able to describe the murder in detail.
Mm.
Yeah. She was also placed in foster care.
Ugh.
You know, they didn't have any family there, and it was difficult to
Yeah.
find family, and little was known about Peggy because she was only there 2 months.
Right.
Living in
Ugh.
that complex, so her neighbors didn't know her.
Yeah. And we're assuming her mom was, or we know her mom was still in Florida or whatnot.
Yeah. I
Ugh.
guess. As you'd expect, the little girl was traumatized and did start having a difficult time,
Sure.
according to CPS. Her foster mother did take her to Peggy's funeral, which was about a week later.
Mm-hmm.
So family were eventually notified. So they ordered, CPS was unsure if it was safe, just I guess because of the history with Peggy.
Okay.
And of course they don't know, it's out of state. They're going to order an investigation.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so they determined her biological family may not have been safe,
Sure.
nor her adoptive. They're unsure if there was any, abuse in the adoptive family as well.
Oh.
But CPS did investigate the sister and,
Okay.
of course, the grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
But after hearings and investigations, she was finally placed with family in Florida. I'm
Okay.
unsure who. but
Okay.
She was placed with family in Florida. So let's shift to the investigation into Peggy's murder.
Yeah.
Peggy was not robbed, and the killer lay in wait. So he was waiting, and he had a specific target. It wasn't random.
But why?
I don't know.
That doesn't make any sense.
Of course, many other theories were investigated, just like we've talked about in the past, the gang shooting theory
Yeah.
we talked about in a previous podcast. All
Mhm.
that, was right around the same time as some others.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't fit into this.
Really?
And yeah, no, it was
I would think the gang initiation thing would fit.
no.
You're always so quick to say no to that. Why? It makes more sense than just
a gang is not going
waiting.
to lay in wait for somebody specific to come out. They're just going to shoot the first person that they can to get out. They're not going to just random. There was other people around and witnesses. So this killer specifically targeted Peggy for a reason.
But why? She'd only been there for 2 months, and they didn't take anything.
Her private life was looked at, especially
Okay.
Brian.
Well, yeah.
Let's go back to Brian. He did attempt to kill her.
Crazy Pants doesn't have money to hire somebody. That dude's in jail, in and out, in and out.
We
I
don't
think you can put that on your books.
I don't know. But he was in jail at the time.
See, okay.
But that doesn't mean he didn't hire anybody.
With what money?
Well, I don't. There may have been life insurance. We don't know. I mean, and I'm sure that was investigated. There may have been life insurance on her, maybe through job or whatever. I don't know.
Okay.
And it could just, be spite and, hey, I promise once I'm out, I'll give you money. I've heard stories of those in jail hiring people all the time. But they looked at that, I assume, He was in prison at the time of the murder, but I assume they listened to phone calls and intercepted mail because that's what they do in prison. They listen to phone calls and all that. Hopefully.
Hopefully.
I don't know, but they do. Phone calls are monitored and they're recorded. So, but they he would have had to hire or convince someone to murder her, and that would have had to been likely not over the phone or in letter.
Okay.
It could have been a cellmate if he did do it. But they kind of, put that to the side. And again, law enforcement it didn't tell me anything, but I would assume that they did look at the records and mail and all that, but I'm unsure. Okay. I know in Texas you can listen to prison phone calls except for if they're talking to their attorney.
Sure.
And we did that in plenty of cases here when I worked in the courts. So, except for attorneys. So hopefully, I'm sure they looked at all of that. I'm sure they talked to cellmates and all that. I don't know.
Okay.
Peggy did have other relationships. Apparently, from what I read, she was always with somebody. She always had somebody. So she may have been seeing somebody at the time.
Okay.
An investigator described Peggy as always having a man by her side. So tips also came into the department, and of course, investigators followed up. One that was mentioned in my research seemed important, and they publicly asked for the caller to please call back, and it isn't known what this tip was. But it did grab their attention, and they did go publicly and say, hey, if you called a tip for this case, call back.
Please call back.
And, and there was also a composite sketch made of the shooter at the time.
Okay.
But the case went cold. Yeah. So it's been almost 26 years since Peggy's murder. Alyssa now lives in Georgia, and she's around 32 years old and has a family of her own. She wears an amethyst necklace, which is her mom's birthstone, and clearly remembers not only her mom, but the murder.
Yeah.
And there are unanswered questions. Was this man paid? Was he mad? Was he jealous? Likely the theory, I'm guessing, if it's a younger person, he was hired. And why would a young person get mad at Peggy? I don't know. But I don't know. There's a lot of
unknowns on this one.
Alyssa just wants answers in this case.
Yeah. And
again, just like every other case that we've talked about, somebody knows something.
Yes.
Whether it is a cellmate of Brian and he hired somebody, whether it's a boyfriend who hired somebody, because I doubt she was seeing a 15-year-old boy and that's why he shot her. So unless it's a kid of somebody she was seeing, which I'm sure they investigated all that.
Well, don't be so sure. We've also talked about LEOs that aren't really.
I'm giving Houston police benefit of the doubt.
You are.
And hoping they investigated that. But they did investigate the men in her life because they knew that she had boyfriends. Let's see. If anybody, knows anything, they've got to come forward. And just like I've said, somebody knows something. There was a getaway driver. We know that. We know somebody else was involved. I've always said, get on the right side of the law. Don't get, because in Texas, even if you were the getaway driver and you didn't get out of the car, you're still could be tried and sentenced to death if it's a capital murder case.
Yeah.
So just being there puts you just as guilty.
Yeah.
If you were in the Houston area in 1998 and saw something, a car speeding off, two young men at a gas station, the car in question, maybe pulling into a home or living next to somebody, or...
And you said it was a late model, 80s-ish black Chevy Cavalier with a dent in the driver's side front?
Yes. Let me double check. Yes. It was a two-door, black, with a dent in the front left side.
Okay.
So it would be an older car, So, somebody knows something. They saw the car, they saw him at a gas station before or after, anything at all. And, again, in 98, we didn't have as many cameras as we do now. So,
there's no tracking that down. This isn't CSI Houston.
Yeah, and there's not a whole bunch of, there's not going to be any DNA. He shot and took the gun with him. So,
and nothing on the ordinance, nothing on the, where they're casing, like, I don't know.
I don't know if there was, I'm sure there were casings, but I don't know. I don't know if they pulled anything from the casings, if there were there. We don't know. Pull DNA from loading.
No. I'm making a face because my face is like, what? Because I'm like, is ordinance the right word? But, casings, something in her. But so no fingerprints that
there would have been bullets.
Right.
But they would have been, it's probably going to be covered in, if it's inside her, it's going to be covered in her DNA. Mm-hmm. But as far as, casings that fell out, I don't. That's not been mentioned. That's something the police are going to keep close. Keep close and quiet. Yeah. So somebody knows something about this case.
So who are we telling? Does Houston have a Crime Stoppers?
Yes. So let's recap. The shooter is described as a young Hispanic male at the time between 12 and 15. He was around 5 foot time at the time. He would be taller. Now, obviously, they grow. Boys grow. He had a thin mustache. The car was a black Chevy Cavalier, late 80s version, 2-door. So we would contact Houston Cold Case Squad.
Houston Cold Case Squad.
Right. Okay. And that number is 713-308-3618.
Okay.
Crime Stoppers, of course, we've talked about this. Crime Stoppers, you can call and leave an anonymous tip. So if you don't want to make known, call Crime Stoppers. Mm-hmm. And they always have rewards in this case. I'm not sure specifically how much in this one, but that number is 713-222-TIPS.
Good.
So we will have pictures of Peggy and a composite of the shooter on our social media pages as this comes out. Please, please, please help their family, Alyssa and her family, get justice. She deserves justice. She was just walking her daughter to school. And any tip, if you think it's dumb or not relevant, just call it in.
Right. You never know. You
never know what it could be. And again, that phone number for Houston, 713-308-3618. You can remain anonymous. Let's get this case solved because the next victim could be somebody you love.
Very true. Don't be a silent witness.
No.
Come forward.
Do opposite of our name.
Opposite.
Let's get this solved.
We know you're out there, so come forward, speak up. The dude would be like 40-ish now.
It's been about, 26 years, so...
12 to 15, so somewhere in there.
Yeah, in his 40s probably.
Okay. All right. So if you were there, if you overheard them talking, you saw them at a gas station, you know the car. I mean, that's... The dent in the front is pretty helpful. And a 2-door Chevy Cavalier, I mean, I don't know. And
if it was a kid, you're gonna know if your kid's driving that car. Like, turn your kid in.
Yeah.
Turn him in. He needs to go to jail.
Yeah.
He killed somebody.
Yep. Man, gosh. Okay. Well, that was poor Alyssa.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can find justice for Alyssa and her mom. Peggy Lynn.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for listening. Call it in. We will have all the information in the show notes for you. So if you have a tip, you can be anonymous. You can call it in and just shout your name, whatever you want to do. If you know anything about this case, if you know any information that could help find Peggy Lynn's killer, let's get it out there. Call Houston, Crime Stoppers, whatever we need to do.
Yes. And follow us on our social media.
Yes.
Please. Silent Witness TX.
All righty. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you. Bye.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production. Are you a podcaster? Let's talk podcast hosting. Are you tired of your current podcast host? Need real support in a community that gets it? At Rogue Media Network, we offer top-tier podcast hosting services to help you thrive. From hosting and distribution to dedicated support, we've got you covered. Starting as low as $25 a month. Join our community of passionate podcasters today. Contact us at hello@roguemedianetwork.com.